What led up to the 9/11 attacks?
So, in the late 70s, early 80s, after Iran fell and Ayatollah Khomeini took over Iran, you had this rise of terrorist groups, right? Terrorist groups, the PLO, all these different groups, and they started attacking American places, mainly because we supported Israel. Because Jimmy Carter helped broker a peace deal between Israel and Egypt, but also mainly because of the U.S. need for oil in that part of the world. And there was sort of this rise of anti-American establishment, okay? In the 1980s, we support a group of freedom fighters, in Afghanistan. We give them weapons, money, to help defeat the Soviet Union. So, and that became the Soviet Union's version of Vietnam. But anyway, when the Soviet Union left Afghanistan, there's a power vacuum. That power vacuum is filled by a guy by the name of Osama bin Laden. That gives birth to the Taliban. And we sort of were in this tenuous relationship with, with this growing terrorism, international terrorism. And then in the early to mid-90s, he started attacking American places. He started attacking the embassy in Kenya. He attacked the USS Cole in the late 90s. And we knew something was coming. But we didn't know where it was coming. He had a rivalry of sorts between the CIA and the FBI. The CIA grows out of World War II, but they don't really... There's nothing in the rule book that says that they got to talk to each other. So this is growing sort of like, you don't need to know what I know, and you don't need to know what I know. And we started getting hints around early 2000. There's a lot of guys over here taking flying lessons. There's a lot of guys over here who's been on, these things, and it slipped and it started slipping through the cracks. And we knew it was coming. We just didn't know where. And so 9/11 was planned. It was a 20-year plan. He planned it for 20 years, bin Laden did. Ever since he helped, got rid of the Soviets in Afghanistan.
How did 9/11 change our country?
Oh, man. Okay, well, you know how when you watch news today, how the bottom, this is a small thing, but you know how across the bottom of the news stations, that started because of 9/11. There was so much information coming out that we had to put across the bottom of the screen what was going on. Before 9/11, you could walk with your family to the gate at the Memphis International Airport. Nah, those days are gone. Just small things like that. But I can remember it was several days before an airplane flew again. It was several days before anybody felt safe. A lot of TV stations, and TV stations that you don't think would be impacted. Comedy Central, MTV. I can remember the Food Network not airing anything for 3 days. College football did not play that weekend. Neither did the NFL. And that had not happened since JFK was assassinated in '63 in Dallas. And so it's just small things like that we take for granted that was impacted by 9/11. Homeland Security. They made it harder to get a driver's license. They made it harder to get on an airplane. They used box cutters that day, something smaller. And so even the smallest thing when you went to fly was taken away from you. Your shampoo, you couldn't have liquid, because then the next thing was, guy had liquid in his shoe, right? He was gonna light his shoe on fire. Do you remember that? So then they changed that. And so the analogy that I give my students is, they hit us with a direction of, okay, it used to be hostages, or we're gonna hold these planes hostage. Now it's, let's take some airplanes and turn them into a bomb. So they took 3 flights that had a lot of gas in them, flying from the East Coast to West Coast. And they just, there you go.
Why do terrorists hate the U.S.?
Ever since the 1950s, there was a guy who was a very well-liked leader in Iran, okay? And the CIA A lot of great things they did, right? And for all you freshmen, that was my sarcasm, if you haven't had me yet. They remove him because he will not give us access to oil. And we put a guy in there that will give us access to oil, but mistreated his people. He's having his lunches flown in from France every day. His wife is bathing in goat's milk. People are starving in the streets. So we have this rise of anti-Western, not America, anti-Western, right? The leaders over there don't wear shirt. They wear a dress shirt, no tie, right? They hate Americans. They hate Westerners. That's going up. 1, 2, like I said earlier, Carter negotiated a peace treaty with Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin. 3, America, through one of our great presidents, Harry Truman, believed in Israel's right to exist. That goes back, right? The 72 Olympics in Munich, when the Israeli team was taken hostage. A lot of that was tied into that. And so it went like all of a sudden, okay, there's a, anti-American sentiment, anti-Western sentiment. This had been building for 50, 60, 70 years. And the Taliban they hated America. When we went to Iraq the first time against Saddam Hussein, we had troops in Saudi Arabia. We used Saudi Arabia as a launching pad for those attacks. Well, they didn't like that. And so that's kind of what happened with all that. So it's just a whole list of things that slowly started. But we were on the right track with trying to get to bin Laden. We just didn't know when and where. And then by the time that we knew, it was really too late. And then after the election after the attacks, is when the government had hearings and they forced the CIA and the FBI to work together. And they were separate entities who are now forced to work together. And now you see terrorist attacks being thwarted a long time before they happen now.